All right, can you guys hear this? Is this good? Yeah, okay. We're gonna get started. Our speaker today is Mark Wojtkowiak, who grew up outside of Buffalo and attended Alfred State and UB, where he did environmental technology. He now works as an investigator for the Bureau of Environmental Crimes Investigation for the DEC, and lives in Almond. So take it away, Mark.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Apologize for the heat up there in that section. We opened some doors to ventilate. So if you're feeling a little overcome with heat, feel free to move down in the cooler section. I'm not going to far up that for that reason, but I do like to move around, so I'm not going to hopefully just stand in front of the podium. All right. A little bit about me. Oh, I have to like right here, huh? It did work. Sorry, folks. Try. Maybe I have to just stand there and use the arrow. We froze. There we go. Okay, now we're good. Okay. Who I am, why I'm here. I've been with the Department of Environmental Conservation for 22 and a half years. A little over that, actually. It'll be 23 years in January. Started as a uniform environmental conservation officer. That's where you start. That's our base level if you want to be in law enforcement in the DEC, okay? And worked my way from uniform. I was a uniform officer in New York City the first 2 years of my career. That's where you will, I promise you, if you go through our academy, you will be sent downstate. That's just the natural progression. You're pretty much backfilling the people that want to get home. I was there for 2 years, had a great time. We were young. My wife took me down there at the time, and she made really good money, and it's a really good opportunity for young folks like yourselves to get down there and see some things that you your life. Then moved to Allegheny County, form officer for about 11 years, and then promoted to investigator. This is one of the first level investigator or promotions. I could have gone either investigator or directly as a supervisor. I wanted to do the plainclothes undercover work for a little while, and decided that I'm sticking to this. Okay, investigator. I was at Buffalo, the Region 9 office, statewide, where I was assigned to the forensic unit and sampling team, and I traveled all across the state. I can say I've been in all but about 5 of the 6 counties of New York State. I'm currently assigned to the Avon office, which is our Region 8 office. All right, special teams that I served on: sampling, environmental forensics, and tech, and regional evidence custodian. So that's like stuff that you're going to see in a second. We are the oldest New York law enforcement agency in the we've been around since 1880. We have our investigators and conservation officers, lieutenants included in supervision, our captains, majors, director. We have about 290 sworn members in the Division of Law Enforcement. The woman you're looking at right there, she is at that point an ECO, an environmental conservation officer. She worked her way up from the lowest ranks up to division director. She is our division director in Albany right now. So anybody that thinks, law enforcement's a male-dominated career, you're wrong. Okay, this is it's a thing. Open to all. New York City officer. You'll see a little bit older of a picture, but they were operating Crown Vics for up until just recently down in New York City. Our black patrol car, can't miss them in the area. And see, that's that might be the Williamsburg Bridge, if I remember correctly. He was an officer. Fun stuff. We get assigned snowmobiles, jet skis, four-wheelers, boats. I had to give all my toys up when I became an investigator. When I promoted to plainclothes, I had those toys. I patrolled Cuba Lake, Rushford Lake, Silver Lake, all the local trail systems in the area, and had a lot of fun. All right, that's one of our big boats. Those you'll see mostly up on the big water here, Lake Erie, River, New York City areas. DEC divisions, there are plenty of divisions. Okay, so we have, I'm here to talk about law enforcement, ECOs and investigators, and all of our commanders that above us, supervisors and commanders. Then you have forest protection, that's lands and forests. Those are forest rangers and forest staff, foresters. Then we have solid staff, environmental remediation, pesticides, air, water, wildlife, fish storage. I'm sure I'm missing some folks, okay? But the first two, so the law enforcement action and then the forest protection, which are the forest rangers, those are the sworn officers. And then everybody else under that are going to be your civilian staff, the support staff. All right. So I'm a state police officer that's employed by the DEC. I'm employed by a civilian agency. All right. Just to kind of give you a rundown of what that looks like. So again, I mentioned I'm an investigator. Mentioned earlier, Bureau of Environmental Crime Investigation, Becky. DEC's Division 2 as our detective unit. We were originally assigned to address all of the rise to the unlawful disposal of hazardous materials and solid waste. That was a huge issue back, obviously, through the 70s and into the early. And we forced uncovering those. All right. For an investigator position, there are 40 positions across the state. Trained in environmental sampling as well as of other things, specialty training that we can get, photography schools, hunter-related shooting incidents, investigations and stuff like that. A whole, CSI, we do a lot of it as an investigator. All right. This is the stuff you see on TV, but it's real. We joke about it, but right. Crime scene court. All right. Caught by myself and 2-3 other investigators from our division as well as state police. And it's a 2-week school. There's a 1-week photography prerequisite, which is no joke. It's actually a pretty complicated course and a lot of theory dealing with your shutter speeds and aperture and trying to get the best photo possible, a latent fingerprint that you just developed. You sometimes have to utilize an advanced alternate light source, ALS, and what do you do? How do you capture that footage in evidence tech? Things that we do, obviously, environmental conservation officers out there for hunting regulations and fishing regulations, as well as all the environmental quality regulations. All right. So we may get a situation where we have a spent out in the field and an officer comes to us and says, I have this spent casing. I think my suspect handled that casing. Can you lift the fingerprint off that casing? So that's what we'll try to do back at the office or the field if we need. We'll try to develop latent fingerprints on a building, on a door. We have a lot of property DEC owns and maintains. Vandalism happens, theft, breaking and entering to our buildings, sometimes our civilian vehicles, stuff like that. So we have to go out and develop our. We have unlawful disposal and other solid waste. I've dusted prints off of drums, all right, and I've submitted them to the state police to be entered into safe, which is the program, the database that you see on the CSI programs that they run that fingerprint against all the violators in the system, right? Who's find them? Blood spatter. I don't know if the photos. There might. If we're at a crime scene, somebody disposes of unlawful material, we have this dumping that happens, solid waste dump, stuff like that. we'll find cigarette butts, we'll find coffee cups, and we've submitted that stuff for DNA. Pretty much as long as it rises to the felony level, especially our hazardous waste laws do, we can submit that for DNA. Not uncommon for us to lift tire tracks and footprints. All right, again, at crime scene, we have casting material to do that. We're trained to do that, and we'll do comparisons as needed. Help us in our interviews later. Suspect in mind. We'll pour dental stone into that, liquid dental stone, and lift that. All right. I should have brought. I actually have a casting I should have brought just to show you. Sometimes our officers will have an illegal take of deer or other types of wildlife. Maybe they'll have a suspect of the carcass, have maybe a gut pile or scene where this animal was taken illegally. They want to compare. You know, is this where the actual crime took place? And we can gather hair evidence or DNA evidence. Forensics, we do a lot with computer forensics when it comes to our search warrants. Any of the businesses that we're dealing with, everybody, it's all computerized now, right? Cell phones too. Okay, so if we're interviewing somebody and we suspect that evidence of a crime is on your cell phone, we can confiscate that cell phone. All right, we don't need a warrant. If we know that there's evidence of the crime, we cell phone will apply for a warrant. All right, everybody's on their cell phone. People are taking pictures of stuff, you know, their illegal takes of deer to show and brag to their guys, their buddies, or whatever, and we can seize those phones, apply for a warrant. Phone. Computers are the same way. When we go into office buildings, all right, you know, we look at a lot of paperwork crimes as investigators, and a lot of their paperwork is on their laptops and on their PCs in their offices. But you got to know how to actually seize the computer property. Doesn't get dumped remotely, which could happen, right? If people don't want GPS tracking, we actually apply warrants if we have an individual that we believe is in the business of, let's just say, illegal interstate commerce of wildlife. Might want to track them if you know where they're going, who they're doing business with, and when they're coming and going. We can do ground penetrating radar. We're trained, and some of us are trained to do this. This is where you have a site. The ground has been disturbed in some fashion. You think you're told that there's barrels there, right? I mean, it might be it might be 100-acre property. Where we start, we find a section that is likely the area, and we'll hit the ground with ground penetrating radar, and we'll show disturbances. It's not going to show you a fancy picture of a drum under the ground, but it'll show you the layered material and the difference between what's been disturbed and what isn't. You gotta know how to read it. All right, and that's the type of stuff we might find with that GPR, the ground penetrating radar. As the sample state, all right, only can't just have go out and just grab. Technically, under the criminal procedure law, the officer or investigator involved has to be the one that kind of has hands on the sample, observe the sample, and then do protocols and procedures after that. Chain of custody, right? So we have to maintain all of that. So we do our own sampling, environmental sampling. Good. I mentioned hunter-related shooting incidents. Our officers, investigators do quite a bit of this. Okay, obviously the DEC manages wildlife. So. Unfortunately, there's still incidents that occur in the state where he pulls a trigger on an animal, and for whatever reason, they didn't know the target and beyond. They strike something that they shouldn't have, or they strike someone that they shouldn't have, which does happen. Okay. To realize here is that hunters discharging a firearm is never accidental. All right. You'll see in the paper, they'll call them hunting accidents, but they're never accidental. We don't call them that. They're incidents because we can almost prove some level of culpability under the penal law, and the low ability we could prove that we only need to prove is criminal negligence. Okay. And so the person pulls a long gun up to the shoulder and they take aim on something and they pull the trigger, that was intentional. They intentionally pulled the trigger. May not have known what they were shooting at, but they intentionally pulled the trigger. So we recreate and we prosecute as needed. And we'll recreate something like this, where you have multiple shooters, potentially multiple people in a deer drive, and you're trying to figure out who's shooting. And you got to lay all this out on a map so that you can present it to a prosecutor's office and a jury, all right, if it gets to that point. Some recreation here. Here, we're just running string lines from the shooter to a victim. All right, and what we're looking at here, all those little pins in the tree, that's birdshot. This is a turkey case, a turkey hunting case. Okay, and if you're a turkey hunter, you bird rounds, which are little tiny BBs, right? And all those BBs end up somewhere. All right, so that it pops on the photo. Some shot components from within the shot shell husk from a shotgun. We just quality. I mentioned we do a lot of that. Something like this. Obviously there's going to be a huge spill response here. This is going to involve our civilian. Remember, I showed you that earlier, our list of civilian staff in the DEC, our spills responders and environmental remediation folks are going to be here. All right. And then we get the call, obviously, investigator if there's any criminality here, right? As far as, driver, what caused the wreck, right? Purely an accident, the chances are there's going to be no charges. Companies have to remediate. The company, the trucking company's going to have to remediate and do their thing. But sometimes there is culpability. All right, and if there is, and it created a substantial spill and risk to the environment, we can look at charges. Okay. Some biggest environmental laws that we investigators utilize are the endangered sections. All right, release of substances hazardous to public health, safety, and environment, for the NCON law. There's varying degrees based on amounts of substance released. If we can prove how much is released, level of culpability as defined in the P. All right, and where the standards. All right, and I look at that. I might have cases. You're going to see a case in here at the end where people were hurt. All right. And then we're looking at criminal classifications anywhere from B misdemeanors up to. So when I told you, yeah, we can submit DNA for analysis if need be, if we get to the level, because sometimes we have felony level cases, and that'll get uncovered bags of asbestos. Driver had no. Where's it going? All right. Those are types of things we look at. All right. We've had trailers. We've had stolen tractor trailers loaded with, whether it be asbestos, hazardous waste, drums, stuff like that, soil, contaminated soil, stolen, parked somewhere and left. All right. So then we got to track down and try to figure out what happened. All right. Forensic evidence that contained there. I mentioned cigarette. We've one of our asbestos cases, we actually had cigarette butts, coffee cup lids, stuff like that, thrown into the same bags as the asbestos, right? All right, we'll take that, we'll bag it up properly, get it submitted. If we don't, we could swab it and submit the swabs, but a lot of times we'll submit the actual item. I want some time to answer questions at the end, and I wanted to get to some cases just so you can see some cool pictures. We might have medical waste that pops up, right? So we have hospitals all over, especially like in New York City. I don't hospitals. You would have their medical waste pop the main waste stream. All right, it pop up on a tipping floor at waste management down there, or transfer station, and we'd have to go and figure out what. But that. We do it obviously with the highest level of calls in place. Again, our sampling team folks can go in suited up in full PPE and do that. Looking for evidence to come from. Illegal pesticide on that unregulated stuff coming in from overseas and making it's making its way through certain markets in New York City. All right. Again, I mentioned earlier, you'll see things in New York City and other big cities in the state. If you're not from there, I never even knew they used to come rural town in Erie County. You drive through towns in New York City, and a lot of the stuff, pesticides, illegal pesticides coming through there. Other areas of the city, they all, again, there's a Polish section, there's Russian sections, and they get their hands on this stuff from overseas. It comes into the States. They sneak it in through the States and ends up on their store shelves and going out to people in the community. So things like, one case was where they were being bed bug a hotel with banned pesticides from overseas. To give you an example, you could be exposed to that if you decide to stay in that hotel. Right? Those type of things, we go in, it's usually undercover first, go in with a warrant and go in the stuff shelves and make the charges accordingly. This is a stripping plant, this furniture stripping plant, chemicals, methyl ethyl death, these drums, right? This stuff was making its way out their sump pump and into the ditch, okay? So types of cases, a passerby that says, that doesn't look right. And that's kind of goofy. And you track it back to this facility, you go in, you take, all right? Chrome, all right? Same thing. Oily Sheen and Canisius Lake, there's a local one right here, the road. Right? Back that back up to the, all right, you find out from a underground storage tank that was getting pulled and punctured and released pretty much directly into a storm drain and into the lake. All right. So that's, again, our officers might get a call on it. They get there. This is going to be a little big to handle. We'll call the investigators to come out and, take our samples as needed and follow to the fact. Punctured a couple of different spots and just letting it drain. This is an interesting one. Salt brine being discharged from a food manufacturer. All right. And a fisherman sees this pipe, right? Like that's not normal, right? Like who would want in the stream, right? And then you see what is coming out of that. We'll mess with, there's a lot of biology students in here and water folks, and that'll mess with the BOD content, right? And I've seen streams like this turn rather interesting just because of something like that. Again, you back it up to the plant. He admits that they upgraded their waste system, added that discharge pipe. Sounds normal, right? Realize that'd be an issue. It's just salt brine. Well, what's salt brine, right? Chemistry, folks. Calcium chloride, calcium bromide, potassium chloride. These are all just options of what could be potentially in salt brine, right? This is a neat I had in Buffalo, the Region 9 office. Reported chlorine gas cloud. I actually, I got into my state in Almonds and right towards Buffalo, which is where I was, the office I was reporting to at that time. I must have got halfway there and I heard on the state police frequency I was monitoring, they were asking their troopers or reporting to their troopers to be aware of a chlorine gas cloud leak drifting across the Robert Moses Parkway in Falls. So automatically my antennas go up and I called my colleague at the time up in Buffalo. I said, Dave, what are you doing right now? He's in Buffalo. Oh, what you got? I told him a deal. And he goes, all right, when you get here, we'll hop in together and go up and see what's going on. So this is one of my local fire chief reported patients were taken to the hospital complaining of respiratory distress and irritation. The fire chief said he was of a tank cleaning facility that the release was just steam. He says the company was cleaning titanium tetrachloride. That right there. It's the actual container. That's something you would see. It would go, like on a flatbed tractor trailer. You can then just lift that tank off of that trailer, put it on a ship or put it in a car or something like that. That's an intermodal container. You pass them on the interstate, I'm sure you realize it. He begins to walk us around process. We check our emergency response guidebook. All of our patrol cars have them. We're required to have them, and that's issued by the DOT, the federal DOT actually. And we can easily flip at a scene of like a rollover or an accident or anything like that on the interstate, and we can run, or look up in our book, we can look up 1838, all right? Or we could look up some of the other information that's on that tank car to help us understand as a first responder. It is, all right? So I look into the ERG right away. 137, all right, very top of the water reactive. 3 folks here. Okay. So some chemistry background, right? For environmental sciences, you must have had some chemistry background, right? Okay, so bear with me because I have just enough chemistry background to be dangerous. Okay, I'm not a chemist. Again, I need to be in environmental technology, environmental chemistry. No, so that's how I say it. I'm not a chemist, but just enough to be dangerous. Into this and right, water reactive. Not only is it water reactive, it's corrosive, inhalation, injection, in an eye, dust or substance may cause severe injury, burns, or death. Great. Okay. There's substance with water, some violently, and corrosive and or toxic gases and runoff. Protective clothing should be using this, or we're working with this material, as well as SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, something like you'd see a firefighter use. We're equipped and trained to use that on our stand as needed. That's, PE Tyvek suit, gloves, boots, and then your full face respirator mask with air tank, right, is your SCBA. Tank cleaning process. So the tank is considered RECRA empty, which means it only contains residuals, certain percentage less than what was in it to begin with. I want to say it's 2 or 3%. That might even be too high. It might even be 1%. I'd have to look it up again. But that technically it's RECRA empty. The workers suit up in full Tyvek, and their job is to go in and neutralize the material and tank so it can be reused. The worker mix water, sodium, a 25% sodium hydroxide solution, but they don't measure it. I find that out in the interviews that I did there. I spoke to the workers, I spoke to the managers. Nobody told them how to measure this stuff. They just kind of throw a few household chemicals in the proper proportions, Solution heated that to 180 degrees, injected via manhole on top of the tank, and you'll see that here. All right, this is where they mix up hydroxide solution that they never really measured, and they don't really know it's 25% solution. They throw it in this tank, and they heat it up. And they heat it up to 180 degrees, and then it gets shot out this hose and down into this cone. This cone is dropped into the top manhole of that tanker car. All right. It's shaped like a cone. You notice anything unusual? It's made out of what? Looks like a way to seal that down on top of the manhole? No. So anything that inside there, if there's any reaction, straight out the top, right? Rubber had solution that they heated up, the sodium hydroxide solution, into the tank, which neutralizes, in theory, the titanium tetrachloride residue. Air emission scent scrubber. So on top of that cone, there was another hose that was supposed to send the fumes out to a DEC permanent air scrubber on the roof of their facility. Rinse water is further neutralized and sent to the POTW, which is your publicly owned treatment works, right? So that's your Niagara Falls wastewater treatment plant. That's where the solution and any remaining neutralized titanium was supposed to go. Sounds fair enough, right? Okay, problems. First of all, this thing is performed in a garage with overhead doors that are open. So there's no negative pressure, and any fumes that come out of the tank and out of the cone of that scrubber head are going to go where? Out the door, right? They're not going to go up through that hose and up to our scrubbing unit up on the roof. All right. And or humidity. What's that do? Kind of heavy, right? Kind of keeps things down to the ground, right? Whereas in a normal, like a super clear, dry day, anything like just straight up into the atmosphere that sticks and lingers down to the ground. Titanium residue is never accurately measured. So remember, RCRA empty, and by definition, RCRA empty is some small percentage of what used to be in the tank. It's all legalese, right? But chemically speaking, in chemistry, they don't know how much is in there actually. It was never sticked. It was never weighed so that they can compare, what's in it versus how much the tank. They didn't do any of that. All right, that's a problem. Water and sodium hydroxide get mixed in the heated vat, but the exact concentration of sodium hydroxide is not known. Remember, the chemistry people who made this material on the SDS sheets, the safety data sheets, say that you need a 25% mix of sodium hydroxide solution to neutralize this stuff. How do they know it's 25% if they measure it? Basic. There's no on the scrubber to prevent emissions from escaping. And what reaction actually some water is introduced to titanium tetrachloride. For the chemistry folks in here, I apologize if this is not a balanced equation. It may not be. I don't know. But this is what it looks like. All right. It's HCl gas, right? Titanium tetrachloride plus water. If it's too much water, right, you get titanium dioxide and hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid in our emergency response book that I keep in my car, that I have to keep there. All right. Tells me where to go. Corrosive, obviously. Toxic, maybe fatal if inhaled, ingested or absorbed through the skin. Public safety, they say stay upwind. If there's an HCl, hydrochloric acid gas, stay upwind, right? Great. Or when they mentioned it was over the air, the state police frequency said it's a toxic chlorine gas release, release. And that was just their assumption. Maybe that's what the initial 911 call was. I don't know. It wasn't a chlorine gas. It's hydrochloric acid gas in all likelihood. And remember when they said the manager told the fire chief, it's steam, just steam, right? Okay. Stay up when many gas heavier than air. Now, let me just see. It's gonna. Video from neighboring business. Notice there's a rail car on the right is moving. Robert Moses Parkway is just on the other side of that rail car. You're looking at a security shack of a neighboring company. All right. In that security shack are two off-duty police officers working a security job, second front job. Right. And they see something coming this way at them. Okay. Surveillance. You're starting to see some white stuff coming in. On a HCl gas release, right? What's it doing to your skin? What are they feeling? Probably burning. What are lungs doing? Burning. Their throat's burning. Their eyes are burning. Okay. So this is why they're trying to get out of there. They eventually evacuate. You're going to see people start fleeing here. Everybody evacuates this building. Facility, the investigation was taking place. It's only about a half a city block away. Midday, look at everybody, their shirts over their mouth, nose. Look at this. Let's go as fast as you can and stir up everything that's already on the ground in front of everybody's faces, right? But anyway, that's just something I noticed. Look at, again, jackets over their faces, jackets over their face. I'm a little hint of this kind of went down. Don't forget your coffee. If you're going to evacuate, make sure you bring your coffee with you. So I'll give you a little hint. We worked this investigation between us and the U.S. Attorney's Office and the U.S. EPA. All right. And when we showed this to the U.S. Attorney's Office, they have one really good environmental attorney there, 100 or so attorneys in the Buffalo. One is assigned to the environmental laws and environmental crime. And when he saw this video, he's like, screw them. We're prosecuting them. So this is not steam. They knew what they were doing. They knew the hazards, and they consciously disregarded the hazards. That's negligence. So that's kind of what happened here. This guy's handing out masks. Is that going to do anything for anything? No. I mean, I guess you tried, but you need at least a half-face respirator with a carbon coverages, to figure out any type of hydrochloric acid gas like that. Obviously, I'm issued a full face respirator or a full face respirator with the full face mask. I have to have it in my car at all times for something like this, right? If I'm at a scene and never know when you're at a factory or facility and something like this happens downwind, I can throw that mask on, get out. And that's at least going to protect, that's also going to protect my eyes, right? From exposure. So get that foot. And I'm arriving there a couple hours after the fact. Where does my evidence go on an air case like this? Do I have a lot of evidence, chemical evidence? Where does it go? Poof, into the atmosphere, right? Just collect that as if it's a beer can sitting on a sidewalk or whatever, shot casing in a field. Air cases are very difficult. So the fact that we were able to get this and see exactly what we were dealing with, and then we went and we had our chemists do the chemistry stuff and tell me exactly what it was that would have happened there. Then we knew exactly what happened. Several people went to the hospital, and what we'll do is we'll get them to sign off on their medical release forms. We'll get records. We'll show what they were treated for. It all correlates. It all matches up, right? So what we're seeing, what the chemist will tell us is happening, and then what their medical records are telling us that happened to them. My time here. Outcome here. This was a prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office of New York. 1 minute with a felony, and the way the criminal justice system works, right? You charge the highest that you can, and then you'll negotiate down. You'll get calls from their defense attorney, say, this plead to this and save everybody's time. Going. Oh, that's how the criminal process works, right? Pleaded guilty to 1 minute diligent indictment. That's a federal act, right? I enforce New York State laws. EPA investigators, CID, Criminal Investigation Division. I have two colleagues, two counterparts in the Buffalo office that we work with. They cover from Buffalo to Syracuse. They have two of them. Remember when I said there's 40 of us in the state? They have two of them that cover from Buffalo to Syracuse. It's just like me, they're plainclothes folks, and they go out and they investigate the same stuff I do, but they enforce it under the federal acts, all right, and the criminal acts, or act, water act, all right, stuff like that. Company was sentenced $1,175 in fines and surcharges. probation department. Training for their severe term. Aren't allowed to obviously take government contracts for and stuff like that. So it does kind of put a little bit of a crimp in their business. That stuff because I knew and I was told that there might be questions, so I talked fast. If there was something you want me to go back. Yes. Oh. Yeah.
Then that one there.
My question is, to what extent are you investigating and prosecuting organizations as opposed to individuals? Is it entirely organizations or some individuals?
So the question was, how do we decide if we're prosecuting individuals or corporations? And interestingly enough, we can do either. It all depends. Honestly, we have a lot of discretion. Police discretion, law enforcement discretion, prosecutorial discretion when it gets to the prosecutor's offices. So it depends on how the people are being with us. If they're being professional and they're giving us full cooperation, we might cut them a break personally and we'll prosecute the corporation or the company. And we have the authority to go either direction. Sometimes we do both. If we feel that there is a ton of personal culpability against an individual in that corporation, we can do both. And it's really a case-by-case basis. But the law allows us to do both, and we kind of make that decision in cooperation with the prosecutor's offices. The other thing too is remember, if things don't go as planned through the criminal process or the prosecution process, you know, I can't throw handcuffs on a company necessarily, but I can put handcuffs on a person. So we'll use that to our advantage. And a lot of times we'll do a corporate substitution. We could charge the individual if things are going our way in the prosecution sense. We can do a corporate substitution in court later and withdraw the charges from the individual and place those charges in the corporation's hands. We just want to have some leverage at all times, right? And nobody wants to get hauled away if we're making a bad decision at the corporate level, but we can do that so that we can get the right outcome that we're looking for. Hopefully that answers your question. It's not clear as mud. There's no right or wrong. There's always a little bit of wiggle room that we have and some playroom. So somebody else had a question behind him.
It's more of like a question for the picture that you had up for the ground penetrating radar one.
Yep.
The one where they dug up something. What was in the bag that they dug up in that picture?
I don't know.
I didn't know.
I don't know. I'd have to go back. It looked to me as I was going through it that it was a bunch of C&D, construction and demolition debris. I'm just guessing. I'd have to go back into my presentation. I've been on so many of these types of cases that I can't just tell you right now, but I think it was construction demolition is what I would say. And that's where somebody takes, just imagine, and this happens. We just did a warrant recently in this county actually of a situation where you have a contractor who knocks down, he demolishes a home, an old home or an old building. All right. It's going to cost him, he realizes it's going to cost him way too much money to take it to the Highland landfill in Angelica or another landfill. So he takes it to his property. He might have 150 acres and he takes it out back and he digs a big hole and he dumps it. All right. And maybe a neighbor sees him do that and they report it, you know, because you're not going to do it one truckload. So now a neighbor reports it. We get some probable cause. And however we can, maybe from the neighboring property line or whatever, and we apply for a search warrant, we go in, maybe we GPR it if we need to. You know, we'll bring in excavators. We have, again, part of our civilian staff. What I don't have, one of the ones I didn't have up there, I don't think, was our operations folks. They are the folks that, you know, when you see a DEC state land sign or the DEC truck trails and the roads and all the infrastructure that we have, they maintain that stuff. So they have excavators, bulldozers, dump trucks, whatever we need. And we'll invite them on our search warrants. You know, we're going to need to dig up a whole house. So can you bring your excavator with you? And they'll come and we'll write that into our search warrant. And we'll ask the judge for permission to go on and dig up, you know, property. So it's not just a search of a residence or a search of a building or a search of the property. It could be that we're digging something up too. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Other questions? I saw another hand somewhere. Yes.
Do you think you struggle more to prove criminal negligence or criminal intent in your line of work than maybe say like regular police officers?
So there's, I mean, yes and no. I mean, sometimes it all depends on the interview and how good you are at the interview, interviewing people, and interrogating people. And, you know, you got to sit down with them, sometimes spend 2 hours with them and try to go in with as much information as you can, knowing what you already know, and you lay it out there. And I'll let people lie to me, and it's not personal. I just know that that's what they're going to do because they're faced with potential felony level crimes. And, you know, I'll let them lie and lie and lie, and then I'll call them out at the end. And just a lot of it, you know, interview and interrogation techniques. And to me, that's what it boils down to more than anything. Because, you know, I would say, I guess, traditional policing, where you have an assault or something of that nature, yeah, that's pretty obvious of what happened, right? Complainant comes in, the victim comes in, they're all bruised up, you know, and then it's the matter of, you know, taking their statement, was their intent based on what they told you, and then you go and pick the person up and interrogate them or whatever it is you got to do. But yeah, here, you know, the environment has to talk to us, right? Tell us what happened, so to speak. And then we have to go do our jobs, and it can be challenging. That is the hardest part. And the hardest part is being lied to, you know, and you got to sit there and listen to it. And then when you know what actually happened, you know, so that is, it's interesting. I will tell you, I have teenagers and they know better than to lie to me because I'll pick it up, right? Because I'm good at that. So, other questions?
Okay,
Yes.
I have a question real quick. You see the crime already done, but I was curious if you had insight into what's the best deterrence before it even happens, like your perspective.
Yeah, public outreach and education. We do weekly highlights, and you know, you can sign up for you know, the DEC press releases, or you can go on their website and get their press releases. And every week they'll put out our highlights of some of our big cases around the state. You know, and as an investigator, we'll put ours in there when the case is closed, and you can see, and then we put that out there so people know, you know, they know, you know, maybe it's not the person that's going to do it, but it might be a person that sees it and says, you know what, I saw somebody do something like that, you know, and I read that you can't do that. And then they call us, you know, and that's the best way, really, the only way. Because I mean, there's so many nuances to the Uncon law. As you see, we do everything. We do fish and wildlife. We do environmental quality. We're doing it all. Wetlands, air, solid waste. I mean, it's, you name it, we're doing it. So, you know, good question.
What's the process to becoming a environmental conservation officer?
Yep. So, glad you asked. So you take a civil service test. Peter, you just took it, right? So there was a sign-up period back in, I guess, August. There was a deadline, take the state civil service tests. You take that, you'll get your scores in a couple months here. And then we have an academy going on right now. Our academy is in Pulaski, New York. We have our own academy, 6-month residential academy. You're there Monday through Friday. They kick you out on weekends to go home, and you're back at Sunday night. Every Sunday night, you're back in the academy for that Monday through Friday training. So 6-month residential academy. Then there's going to be about a month field training after that. And then you go downstate. You got to have I don't want to get it wrong. I'm going to read you our qualifications because they just changed recently. I'll also give you the updates on our salaries because those just changed recently with our contract that we just got. So qualifications are bachelor's or higher level degree, or an associate's degree in one of the following: associates and 1-year experience in the environmental field, associates 1-year experience as a police officer, or an associate's and 2 years active U.S. military service. And the bachelor or higher level degree isn't anything, okay? It used to be an environmental or it was environmental or life sciences. but now it's anything, all right? If you're a computer major, you saw that we might need you on our search warrants to go and seize computers and analyze them and cell phones and you name it. That's great, because I don't know what I'm doing. I barely know how to work this stuff, right? So, so that's, you know, we need anybody really that is smart enough to get to that level in their education career, and do that. Everybody's an asset as far as we're concerned, okay? Oh, by the way, I do our background investigations. So what'll happen is, you know, I know Peter, you don't mind if I mention you took our test, right? So, like I told Peter, he someday is going to get a phone call, and say, hey, we're looking at scheduling our next academy class. If you're interested, come on up to our academy, take our physical agility test. That's going to be running, push-ups, sit-ups, swim. And we're going to see where you're at. Oh, and flexibility too, and see where you're at, right? If you pass all of that, then you get, included into our background process, and an investigator like myself will come and do your background investigation. All right, that's an in-depth background investigation. So like I mentioned before, like keep your nose clean. You do a good job, stay out of trouble. And then there will be, you get through a background process. Again, there's going to be a polygraph, psychological test done. It's just like any other police job, okay? And then you go from there. If you pass all of that, you get invited to our academy. Salaries, those just changed with our next contract. Starting $68,191. After 1 year, you go up to $83,543. And at job rate, you're at $92,977. All right. There's also a downstate differential of $10,000 annually. And that is for the regions 1, 2, and 3 offices, which are Catskills, New York City, and Long Island because of the cost of living. Benefits, I almost forgot, right? Take-home car. I have a take-home car. I had a take-home car. It was a marked unit when I was in uniform. My car now is a unmarked car. So I start my day at my house. I end my day at my house. All right. Obviously, flexible schedule. The conservation officers more so even than me. You know, when I was in uniform, you know, if I'm working deer jacking detail, which is, you know, the people that are out poaching deer at night with lights and guns from their cars, I'd start at 3 in the afternoon. All right. So that makes it pretty easy for daycare, child services, stuff like that, getting things done around the house, you know, hop in the uniform, hop in the truck, call in the service, go out and do your job, get home, 11 o'clock at night, do it again the next day. Obviously state vacation, personal and sick leave. I have a ton of leave, you know, obviously good health care, you know, all of our uniforms and equipment are provided. So been a good job for me. Like I say, it's a 25-year, right now it's a 25-year retirement plan. So I work till 25 years and then I have the option to retire with 50% of my salary, and then all my benefits and stuff like that. So any other questions?
So if guys have any more questions, Mark is going to stick around, so you can welcome to come up and chat with them. And with that, I want to thank you again for coming.
Absolutely.